11 days. But what did they do? They wandered, and because of their behavior, because of their sin, because of their disobedience and unbelief, God caused them to wander. It's not because God didn't know the way, but it's because these folks' disobedience. But this is not that time. God has led His people into this promised land. Joshua's experienced something here that Moses had been trying to accomplish for 40 years. We know how great a man Moses was, but Moses never set foot in that land. But Joshua here, this is great. This is something good. This is progress. We're headed where God promised and God wanted us to go. That land holds a very important place in God's world. That land is very important. But we find that Joshua was finally experiencing the victory that he had personally been longing for all of his adult life. You remember Joshua was one of those two spies, right? And he's one that actually his feet were on that land. He saw the abundance, the land that was flowing with milk and honey. He saw the reality of that. But you know what? He couldn't go back there and visit every now and then. He couldn't go back, so he's completely stuck. He was more than ready 40 years earlier to get into Canaan land. He was more than ready with his friend Caleb to go ahead and conquer that land and do what God told him to do. But he had to wait 40 years. 40 years to see what God... So you would call that progress, genuine progress in the life of Joshua. Here he is, since a young man, now that faith, what God said, has become sight. And they've walked across that Jordan River, and now they're exactly where God told them to be. Exactly where God wanted them to be, and exactly where they wanted to be. Not only was Joshua experiencing genuine progress, he was experiencing God's promotion. Look in chapter 3, verse number 6. Joshua 3, verse number 6. This is just before they crossed over. It said, "And Joshua spake unto the priests, saying, Take up the ark of the covenant, pass over before the people. And they took up the ark of the covenant, and went before the people. The Lord said unto Joshua," verse 7. This is something now. "This day will I begin to magnify thee in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with thee." Man, that's quite a promotion, isn't it? Joshua had been a follower his whole life. He had been one that had held up the hands of Moses and defended Moses in every way. But here it is, and if you've got any question of what God thought of Moses, read the end of the last few verses of Deuteronomy. You'll see that he spoke with Moses face to face. That's not very common, even throughout the Word of God. But you find here, what did God tell Joshua? He said, I'm gonna show these people. I'm gonna lift you up, Joshua, and show them that, hey, as I was with Moses, I'm going to be with you. Man. And then we look just after they cross over. I mean, Joshua, what did he? He had gone from being a soldier, and a soldier he was, to being the shepherd. Then now he's the leader of a nation. But we find also in chapter 4, verse number 14, on that day, what day? The day they crossed over. It said on that day, the Lord, what did God say he was going to do? Then what did he do? The Lord magnified Joshua in the sight of all Israel. And they feared him as they feared Moses all the days of his life. Why did they fear Moses? Because Moses was mean? No. Because Moses was cruel? No. But when he come down off that mountain and the glory of God was shown upon, they didn't want it. They were like, whoa, you stay over. You put something over your face because we cannot take being around you because, why? The presence of God. They were there, and you find here what now? Joshua's been promoted now. Joshua was amongst that crowd. He was part of the people that followed Moses. Now he's promoted. So, I mean, you find here everything's going. I mean, they're in Canaan land. They've promoted, and then now Joshua has been promoted. It's so much better. Remember this, it's so much better when God is the one promoting you instead of the self-promotion we see so much of. It's not necessary. It's not necessary. Just because, and also just because you understand where we're headed. We're headed to a time where Joshua felt like he didn't need to seek counsel of the Lord. But you find that just because God has paved the way, He paved the way for Joshua, that didn't mean there was no need to pray. That didn't mean there was no need to seek counsel of the Lord. God magnified Joshua. All Israel knew that God was with him. Man, if there is something, you think of, y'all may think of it, you think of it a little more as you get older, but you think of your tombstone. Well, certainly I don't want on my tombstone, man, he sold a lot of refrigeration parts. That would be what. But wouldn't it be something for it to be on there? God was with him. Man, that'd be something, wouldn't it? Not something, like I say, not something you're claiming yourself, but that the people and God himself were saying, hey, God was with that man. All the people feared him. And this was even more of a reason for Joshua to pray. Turn to Joshua chapter 6. Verse number 27, we find here that Joshua was experiencing great publicity. Chapter 6, verse number 27. So the Lord was with this is right after the walls of Jericho came down. Now, did Joshua do that? No. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot Joshua could have done about that. But what did Joshua have the opportunity to do? He had the opportunity to obey God. So in obedience, Joshua did that. He said here in verse number 27, so the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was noised throughout all the country. So Joshua was getting quite a name for himself here in this place. They had crossed over Jordan, 40 years in the making. He had not done nothing in that wilderness but long for that place. Some of the people he were with that crossed over Jordan had never even seen it, never stepped on it, and maybe not even I'm sure they heard the stories from Joshua saying, hey, I can't wait to get back there. Cannot wait to get back there. It's been 38 years, but I can't wait to get back there. It's been 39 years, but I cannot wait till I get in that place. And God had already said 40 years, so how many years was it going to be? 40 years. There was that. God's a man of his word. He's not like us as parents at times. One time my son, Brian, he had not long got his driver's license. He was driving Samuel places. He was driving Emily places, but Brian did something stupid. And I said, I'm taking your keys away from you. And you know what? That was way more aggravating on me and Mama than it was on him. I was thinking I punished him, but wait, this didn't work exactly how I thought it was. This was a stupid punishment because it just put work on myself. So what did I do? I said, hey, don't do that again. But I'm going to give you your keys back. But you understand, God's not that way. If God says something, if he says 40 years, if he says 400 years, you can count on that. You can set your clock by that he's not going to bend and he's not going to break. But we find here that but Joshua, his fame had went all abroad. News was spreading that God was with him. That's a good thing. That's a great thing. And that this was the kind, I mean, that's what you pray for, isn't it? That's right. If you're going to be known, you want to be known that, hey, God is with him. God was with Joshua, and there was no doubt about that. The news, his fame, was not because he was a compromiser, not because of some evil thing he did, not because he had run off with a piano player or the money, or you know how that guy. You've been in church long enough that you've heard that time and time and time again. That wasn't why he was famous. That wasn't why his name was going around. His name was going around because he was doing things right. Man, God's approval. Now, why God's approval? God here said, hey, I'm going to magnify you. Man, that's quite a compliment. Why would he do that? Chapter number 8, we look through a whole chapter. Joshua was deadly in war. He was a soldier. He was a man. I mean, and you understand. You read the Old Testament, you read through what God did to some of these nations and what God did to his own people from periodically. There's a lot of bloodletting throughout the Old Testament. But one thing you can rest assured on, God is right. Every single time, God is right. I might not understand it, you might not understand it, but God is right all the time. And if you doubt that, if you wonder sometimes, man, did he have to do it this way? Did he have to do it? Did he have to, like Samuel there, when Saul didn't kill that one king? You think, was that really that? Oh, we're Americanized version of Christianity take God's commands very lightly. Saul took one lightly. Left one person alive out of a group of people. What did that cost him? His kingdom. And what did Samuel do? Sweet Samuel. Sweet little Hannah's little baby boy Samuel. What did he do? Hecked him up. We have a chicken plant that we service in Union Springs, Alabama. They service Muslim food. You take chickens in a chicken plant. Y'all ever seen the trucks rolling into the chicken? Well, they've got machines that just debone them, kill them first, and then debone them, and then process them. But this place, because they're Muslims, and the food is going to Muslim people or whatever their food is, they have to kill all those chickens by hand with a knife. So they have about 6 men in this room, has to be men too, in this room.